The Girl Who Burned Thee. Episode 4. And then, I made up my mind. I had to protect her and love her no matter what. It wasn't her fault after all. I guess I should learn to let go of the past and move on, like everyone else. Healers could be useful for those werewolves around the world today. I smiled back at Talia and took 3 big strides towards her. Lifting my hand, I pushed it into her soft fur, enjoying how good it felt. I looked into those green eyes and said, "Hey, Talis. You're beautiful, babe." Because it was true. She was stunning. A bit of a mess, like the rest of us really. I sat next to her and rested my head against her tired body. I could tell she'd fallen asleep from being knackered after the first couple of changes, because her breathing was so deep. Then, I too was dragged into the darkness and pulled into a deep sleep. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. I felt my head hit the ground hard as my pillow ran away, squealing. I opened my eyes quickly, rubbed the back of my head and groaned. She should already be in human form. I got up, brushing the dirt off my white polo shirt. "Talis!" I shouted, casting my eyes around, but I couldn't find anything. "Over here," she shouted back, waving her hand behind a tree and sticking her head out. I smiled when I saw her bed head, even if it were covered in leaves. Her cheeks were flushed and her head had a bit of dirt on it. I thought she was cute, but I have to admit that she did look cute. I started to walk over to her, but she picked up her hand and yelled, "Nuh-uh. Stay where you are." "What? Why?" I asked, sounding a bit hurt, from a distance. I made a face and put my hands in my pockets. She stuck her head out again, her cheeks all red, and gave me a pointed look. "You know why?" she said, pouting. "No, I don't," I said, confused, shaking my head and looking down. Was she worried that I might hate her for what she was? I didn't want her to think that. I was about to say something, but she cut me off. "Come out from behind the tree so we can have a chat." "You don't?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. She looked at my face as I nodded at her, taking a little step towards her. She hid behind the tree again before yelling, "Don't come closer. I swear, Kieran Zachary Redford." "Why not?" I asked, waving off that she used my full name. "Well, I'm not wearing anything, so that's why." She said what she was thinking. I froze as I was about to take another step and went red as all the dirty thoughts came into my head. Wow! I spent the whole night with my head on her soft skin and I didn't even realize? I know it's a bit weird, but if you were a guy, you'd get it. She poked her head out again and looked down at the bulge that had returned just a minute ago. "Trust me. Waking up is the second hardest thing in the morning if you know what I mean." "Oi, you pervert," she said, blushing a deeper shade of red. I just laughed and let the awkward silence fill in. "Aren't you going to give me my dress?" "Nah," I said. "It's all torn up from when you changed last night." "Ugh." She groaned and I couldn't help but think something naughty as she said that word. "Here, use my shirt," I said, taking off my shirt and feeling eyes on my chest. I couldn't help but shiver at her gaze, even if this was probably like the 1000th time she'd looked at my chest. It never got old for her and her reaction never got old for me. I threw the shirt at her outstretched hand and she caught it perfectly. She stuck her hand back behind the tree and I heard her sigh as she put it on. I couldn't help laughing when she said she didn't like my scent. She came back out, looking a bit shy, and I couldn't help but look down at her long legs and curves that were on show in my baggy shirt. I was lucky that the white polo was made of thick material because if it was sheer and I saw every inch of her, I don't know what I would do. She stopped a few inches away from the tree and shifted her foot as if she was self-conscious about her body. I couldn't help but lick my lips at her body. It didn't help with her bedhead hair. I groaned and said, "Why do you have to be so beautiful?" "What? No? No hot? Isn't that what guys say?" she asked, laughing shyly. "What? No way. When a guy says a girl is hot, he's only looking at her body. If a guy says a girl is pretty, he's only looking at her face. But when a guy says a girl is beautiful, he's looking at her heart as well as her looks. Believe me when I say that you're gorgeous. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And how many girls have you told that to?" she asked, laughing again. "About 30, but only once did I mean it," I replied, giving her a heated gaze to tell her she was the one. I smiled gently at her and she smiled back. She gave me a playful roll of her eyes before going back to just chatting. But, of course, I broke the silence and joked, "Come on, big girl. Don't I get a good morning kiss?" I made a bit of a silly face as she laughed and came over to me. I felt a stronger connection towards her because she had changed last night. I felt so much better and more relaxed when I got her lovely strawberry smell and held her close to me, putting my arms around her tiny waist and enjoying the heat radiating off her body. I pressed my lips against hers and kissed her deeply, every kiss better than the last. "Hi there," I whispered, leaning my head against her forehead and watching as her eyes fluttered open. Talia smiled and said, "Hey there, Kier. You're so corny." "Just for you, darling," I said, giving her a kiss on the nose. Oh yeah, I was definitely going to love her no matter what form she was in. Talia's POV. "Can I ask you something?" I asked Kieran quietly, thinking about what had happened last night. I'm still feeling the pain in my gut and can hear my screams in my ear. And the most important part of all. Why did I change into a werewolf? Kieran squeezed my hand, which was holding his. He was shirtless and I really tried to stop staring at his chest. He kissed my forehead and sighed, like he was trying to calm me down. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've got loads of questions after what went down last night." I nodded and ran my fingers through my rough hair. For some reason, the bit of light that made it into the forest looked really bright. I could practically see the dust particles floating around. My sense of smell was also unavoidable. I could smell Aunt Mabel's famous caramel nut pancakes even before I saw my house. "Did I?" I started to say, but then the loud noise of a bird's chirp cut me off. It was like the sound of screeching tires, but even louder. I jumped, cringing, into Kieran. I thought the best thing to do right now was to clamp my hands over my ears and squeeze my eyes. "Talis, you all right?" Kieran asked, his voice cracking as he rubbed a hand down my back. "I promise everything's going to be fine." "What?" I screamed, and even my voice sounded more melodic, more smooth. I stopped, pointed my finger at him. Kieran Andrew, what's going on with me? He raised his hands up in the air and laughed. Andrew isn't my middle name, by the way. I don't even have a middle name. Stop changing the subject and tell me what's going on with me, I said, crossing my arms above my chest. Kieran let out another sigh, running his hands through his unkempt hair. Look, it's not my place to tell you what's going on. It really isn't. But, what I'll tell you is that your mum is hiding things from you that you have the right to know. Are you going to tell me what's going on, or what? I said, seething. I was so annoyed that I grinding my teeth. That was the line. It was just a sign that I was angry, and nobody likes being around someone who's had enough. Can you just wait, babe? Kieran begged, grabbing my elbow. I threw his arm away, shocked at my newfound strength. I could feel the tears starting to well up, and my lip was quivering. Kieran noticed his shoulder was slumped and he let out a sigh. Just a couple more minutes and I promise you'll be in the loop. You just don't get it. How I feel. Why have I been feeling so emotional lately? I felt like an old, grumpy woman on the premenstrual cycle, but on rewind. I wiped away a stray tear. I'm not sure what's going on with me. Do you have any idea how I feel about not knowing if I'm dying or something? Wow, Talis. You aren't dying, he said, sounding a bit annoyed. He ran a hand down his face. I'm really struggling not telling you. Trust me. Okay then, I said. Then, I started to walk away, ignoring his constant calling and the way he was walking literally on my heels. When I got to the back door of my house, I caught a whiff of pancakes and my stomach let out a grumble. It was as if I hadn't eaten in a year. The sound of footsteps coming down the stairs was really loud. Talia Mum's voice said, but she was cut off by the moaning and grunting of pain. Mom! I yelled, worried, and ran to the stairs, where I found her. She was in her pajamas, which was unusual for her since it was already midday. Her face was all contorted and sweaty. She had a tumbleweed on her head. She grabbed the banister with one hand and held her stomach with the other as she took a step. I ran up to her, rubbing her shoulder and helping her down the stairs, and Kieran followed. We guided her to the sofa and she finally got comfortable. Mom, I whispered, my voice scrunched up. What's wrong? Oh, it's nothing. Just food poisoning, she said, dismissing it. Mum, none of us got food poisoning, but you. I asked. It's not right. Honey, I had some pretty bad sushi after the party. It was my fault, she said, sounding a bit tired. Do you want me to get you anything, Serena? Kieran offered his hand to my mother, and patted it. Oh, no, it's all right. I just hope you didn't tell her yet. Nah. You kept your promise. What is it? I was about to shout, but I stopped myself because my mum was unwell. I sat on the couch opposite her and looked into her eyes. Darling, I know you know about werewolves, my mum said. And I'm here to tell you that how would I put it? I guess there's no easy way to do it. My family, the Sinclair, are the strongest werewolves around. We're the biggest pack in the whole country. So, it turns out we've got a long history of werewolves in our family, and not just any ordinary werewolves, but some seriously strong ones. We were second to the healers. So, all the alpha, beta, and regular werewolves out there better bow down to our throne. But let's not get bogged down in that. After all, we're friends. We respect each other, she finished, adding air quotations where needed. She laughed nervously at my pale face. Kieran stood back, not interrupting the chat my mother had just given me. So, you're saying you're a werewolf? Elias is too. And now you're saying I'm one. I stopped, my hand shaking. I started laughing a bit awkwardly. This has to be some kind of sick dream. It isn't. To be honest, I never thought you'd change. You were such a late bloomer, darling. Sometimes, the lucky Sinclair never became a werewolf. I was hoping you'd be one of them and live a normal life. Mom frowned slightly. And you kept this from me my whole life. I said, my voice raising up. Look, it's not really possible for us to tell you about werewolves until you come across one or until you turn one yourself. Kieran cleared his throat and started, a bit awkwardly, Serena, she's the one. My mum jumped up in her chair, her eyes going wide. No, she whispered. Mom, what's going on? I said slowly, not sure what was going to happen next. Darling, go and get in your room. I've got to call your grandfather, Mum said, shaking her head. Mom, I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on. Hey, glad you're back, Elias said. He saw me and looked pretty annoyed when he saw me wearing Kieran's shirt and Kieran was shirtless. I'll tell you, it wasn't a nice sight. What? Did you touch my sister? Bro, didn't I warn you? He started to walk over to Kieran, who stood up straight, his eyes still on me. I couldn't help but cry as I watched what was going on. Why is she crying? Elias said that his nose was already touching Kieran's. He pointed to me and said, Did you get her pregnant? I'm sure I don't have to keep telling you kids about the importance of birth control and condoms, do I? Ugh. I'm too young to become an uncle. When Kieran was about to protest and my brother pulled his fist back, I slowly said, You guys lied to me. I've always thought I knew what was going on, but now I'm starting to wonder if I've been lied to my whole life. It's been a bit of a joke, hasn't it? I had no idea. Just a third party? So, you never felt it was necessary to share the details of the Sinclair secret with me? I sniffed and started running up the stairs, ignoring my mum calling me, the shocked look on Elias's face and Kieran chasing me. Before Kieran reached the top of the stairs, I shut my bedroom door, leaned against it and slid down towards the cold floor. My whole world was turned upside down. Do you know what it's like to be in the dark? I'm just wondering if you knew about this secret, or if it was something you weren't privy to because you weren't one of them. Especially if it were your family? I was in a state of shock. I'd wiped the tears away and started ignoring the banging on my door from Kieran when I saw a glint under my table lamp. I got up slowly and went over to a plate on my desk. As I got closer, I saw a dark brown bottle on a single porcelain plate that had come from my brother's party. and written on the plate in dark red ink that was easy to read in a hazard from 10,000 miles away was, "See how easy it was to get to your loved ones? Just be careful about what you eat, love." Luckily for you, your mum's a werewolf and could handle the poison that was put in her food. That was when I had enough. I gave the plate a good old heave and sent it flying across the room, using a force I didn't even know I had. I watched as the porcelain plate shattered into 1,000 pieces, watching them fall to the ground like my life was. Then I heard the sound of my locked handle breaking, and Kieran appeared at the door. He stood for a second, taking in his surroundings. Then, I looked into his eyes. It was full of despair and worry. He was worried that something had happened to me. I felt the tears rolling down my cheek while my stomach churned with disgust and fear. But I just couldn't work out what was up with this newfound courage I'd got. I've become a lot braver since then. I guess it was a wolf thing. I stood still, my hands and fists at my side. I clenched my teeth and let out another little growl. My vision was going all blurry, like, really high contrast, then back to normal again. "Talis?" Kieran asked, taking a few small steps towards me. "Why did you just throw the plate?" I didn't say anything, I just watched as he got closer to me. And when he'd had enough of his cautious approach, he took 3 long strides and threw his arms around my little body. I put my face in the crook of his neck and breathed in my mate's scent. I found what I was looking for and it made me feel good. Because he hadn't put on his shirt yet, I could feel his muscles through the white thin material of Kieran's shirt that I was wearing. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Look, I promise I'll tell you everything and you'll promise to tell me everything once you've had a bath, okay?" he said, sincerely. He rested his forehead against mine, boring his green eyes into my own. "Please, for me," he said through our link. I groaned. "Can't you just let me know first? Showers can wait." "Nah," he said, waving his hand in my face. He moved away from me, wrinkling his nose. "And, on top of that, you stink." I smiled and laughed out loud. I couldn't believe he could make a joke after everything that happened today, and it was only morning. Kieran joined in with a laugh and kissed my temple. "You know, you're such a silly goose sometimes," I replied. "And you're a stupid all the time." I laughed and lightly punched his stomach, surprised at the strength I had. "You're a bit of a jerk. And put on a shirt, before you make me go blind." "What?" "This," Kieran said, gesturing to his body. "This is cute." I snorted and rolled my eyes. "Vain. If you haven't noticed, I don't find you attractive." Kieran's eyes narrowed and looked a bit wild. I felt a bit uneasy as he moved in closer to me, his heat reaching my body. He put his hands around my waist and started rubbing them up and down in circles, then put them on the small of my back. He pulled me close and I could feel his muscles pressing against my body. Just to be clear, I was wearing nothing but this shirt. I mean, literally nothing but the shirt. He bent down and touched his lips to the dip between my collarbone, which made me shiver. I got the shivers. He left a hot trail of light kisses until he met the eclipse moon mark, the mark he made, and that's when I thought my knees would go weak. I let out a little moan, leaning my head back so he could get in better. I could feel him smiling as he kissed me again, and I moaned even louder. His nose trailed up my neck until his lips reached my ear. He whispered, "Honey, you look cute. Especially when it comes to what you're wearing. It's only fair if I made you believe I'm attractive too." Then he laughed when I slapped his shoulder, going red all over. "You're the worst boyfriend ever," I said, stalking off to the bathroom and lowering my head, embarrassed. "Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add." "So, why'd you throw the plate?" Kieran asked, stroking my hair. We were cuddling on my bed after we'd showered separately. Luckily, we were all dressed appropriately. I was lucky enough to find some clothes for Kieran that my brother doesn't use, so he doesn't have to keep going back and forth. I let out a sigh, looking at the now clean floor. I've got to thank Aunt Mabel. She hasn't bothered me today yet because she knew I was in a bad mood. But she did give me a telling off. "Your mum's just trying to do the right thing, and God only knows how rude you were to her," she said, in her southern accent. I played with Kieran's fingers before finally answering. The Iron Justice decided to make a visit. I could feel him tensing up his fingers, frozen in my hair. "What?" He started to raise his voice. He started to get up, but I pushed him back down. I was just fed up with arguing. "Kieran, relax, please." "No way." "Talia, he's been in your room, for the second time now. He might do that if he decided to come in your sleep, you know." "Kieran, I'm all right. We'll worry about that when the time comes. We'll have to figure out what my options are. But let's not go into that. I'm tired of immaturity." Talia no, he let out a sigh and ran a hand through his hair. "Just tell me what was on the plate." "Well, it was just the porcelain plate from my brother's party last night. And on top of that, there was this brown bottle filled with poison, I think. It's the same poison that Mum had." The plate had a message on it saying something about being careful and that my mum was lucky. Saying how easy it is to get close to my loved ones. I could feel the tears starting to well up because I was so scared. "That explains the wolfsbane," Kieran said, concluding with a comforting rub on my arm. "What?" "I found this," he said, pulling out the brown bottle from his pocket. He opened the cap and my nose scrunched up. "It's got a bit of a stench, hasn't it?" I nodded and pushed the bottle away. My nose felt like it was burning now, actually. Kieran put the cap back on. "It's wolfsbane. They put it in your mum's food last night to poison her. Wolfsbane is the weakness of a werewolf. It's like kryptonite for Superman. If you eat or come into contact with it, you might have a reaction that could be fatal to wolves. If it wasn't deadly, then you'd get ill, in this case, your mum." "So, my mum's a werewolf?" I asked, feeling a bit unsure. "Yeah, and your brother too. Your family is quite an interesting bunch." "Yes, your mum was right. The Sinclairs are the top dogs when it comes to werewolves. Actually, it's higher than the experts predicted. You remember the council my dad is on? The only reason the Sinclairs aren't in it is that they have no reason to be. We bow down to whichever Sinclair, human or not. When I heard your middle name, I was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe you were one of the highest castes. Why am I different? I asked quietly, remembering the look on my mum's face. Why did you say, it's her? Kieran ran a hand through his hair, sighing again. You're a healer. My mouth fell open and I stuttered when I said the next part. Hey? I thought you said healers didn't exist. Don't you hate me? I started to panic and tried to get off him, but he just chuckled and pushed me back down. Chill. I was a bit confused myself. I'd never hate you. I asked your mum while you were having a shower. It turns out it's the Sinclair secret. It's the reason you're now number 1 instead of second to the healers. Because you guys are the healers. The Sinclair family is an interesting bunch. As it happens, a female healer survived, and she ended up having kids with a human. The 4 kids were half human and half healer. So, the lines could only skip a generation before the next batch of healers were born. So, your grandpa's a healer, but your mum's not because it skipped her generation. That makes you and your brother the next in line to be healers. But your brother was born a regular werewolf because Mother Nature decided it, I guess. I was gobsmacked. My mouth opened wide, and I was lost for words. I was gobsmacked by the info Kieran gave me, but it seemed like it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I'm not werewolf material. I'm not really the healer type. I thought healer was supposed to be the bad guy, right? Or is it good? Healers were supposed to heal, weren't they? I don't know anything. That's why you just got to take it slow and get you up. We're kicking things off tomorrow, Kieran said, ignoring my protest. I crouched down, my fingertips almost touching the ground. My flyaway hairs were sticking up all over my forehead with sweat. My purple tank top was soaked in sweat, and I wrinkled my nose at the stink. Go! Kieran yelled as I heard the beep of his timer. So, I just did what Kieran said and flew from my position. I could feel the cold breeze hitting my face, arms, and legs, and I got the goosebumps. I was running perfectly, turning to dodge the trees in the forest while I heard the crunching of leaves under my Nike trainers. I'm much better at running now. I couldn't run at all before, but now I was running like Flash. Before I got these new skills, 1 mile was enough for me, but now I'm doing 10 miles. My vision narrowed to focus on obstacles in my path, telling me to move out of their way. As soon as I saw the orange cone, I knew I had to turn and run back to where I started, so I did. I could feel my feet on the ground, and they weren't pounding like a normal person's. I rounded the cone, running back to where Kieran was. When I crossed the cone, I heard the timer beep again. I had to put my hands behind my head to open up my lungs. I remember the first time I had put my hands on my knees, wheezing, and Kieran barked at me that I was just straining my lungs. I looked up, and Kieran was looking at his timer, clearly shocked, before smirking. Wow, babe, Kieran winked. I like it fast. That got a bit of a laugh out of me. Stop thinking nasty, I said quickly, as I felt my wet ponytail with a sense of disgust. Well, if you knew I was thinking nasty, then you were thinking nasty too, he retorted, defending himself. I felt my cheeks flush, and I said, ugh, whatever. Just let me know if I've broken my record. Kieran gave me a smile that made my heart melt and won an award. I've never had someone be so proud of me for something so small. He threw the timer in my face, pointing at the time. Wow, I said, jumping up and down and giving Kieran a quick kiss on the lips. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. When I'd calmed down a bit, Kieran gave me another smirk, folding his arms across his chest. Now, drop and give me 4. 2 push UPS? That's super easy, I said, already dropping down to my hands and feet. 400, babe, Kieran said, a hint of amusement in his voice. After 400 sit UPS. What? I yelled, looking at him from where I was standing. You're joking, right? I can barely do 7. Am I being serious? Also, you're a werewolf now. Anything is possible. I'm doing this to help you out. I don't care if you're tired, scared, hungry, thirsty, or if you don't like me, he said in a high-pitched coach voice. I looked at him, a bit dumbly I must admit, and then I blinked, and said, actually, you do. Yeah, I guess so, he said, shrugging. Just drop and give me 400. He blew his whistle that he wasted his money on. I rolled my eyes, but I was amazed at how easily I did 400 push-ups and sit UPS. I was on my last 10 sit UPS, and my stomach muscles were really hurting. That's when I started to slow down. Come on babe, Kieran cheered. Don't stop now. 10 more. Here, I'll give you a quick kiss every time you come up. When I came up, Kieran bent his head to my level and puckered his lips. I looked at him, amused, before pushing him away. Gosh, you're so corny, I said, laughing. Kieran laughed and motioned for me to continue. When I'd finished my sit UPS, Kieran put his hand on the small of my back and said, okay, let's do hide and seek. Excuse me. It's all about getting used to the heightened senses. Smell, touch, hearing, etc., Kieran said before giving me a cheesy smile. So, count to 10 and find me, babe. I closed my eyes and counted to 10 in my head. It was a bit of a challenge to hear his footsteps. I could hear the buzz of flies, bees, and other insects. But I forced myself to focus on him, and that's how I knew he went to the right side of the forest. I opened my eyes and took a deep breath of the air around me. The smell of forest leaves and pine sap, and finally the sweet smell of my partner. I could feel my wolf pacing around inside me. I could hear his steady heartbeat and slow breathing, even though I couldn't see him. I followed my senses and looked around the forest. After a while, I finally saw his outline behind a tree about a mile away. I made my way to the bushes and crouched down, and then I thought I was in a good spot. He had his back to me and was leaning against the tree, completely unaware of my presence. I jumped out and put my arms around his waist. Tag, you're it, I whispered in his ear. Kieran turned around in my arms to face me, putting on a fake look of disgust. Gross, babe. You're so sweaty and stinky, he joked, putting his arms around me too. What? I said, surprised. This is cute. Very cute. You're so vain, Kieran teased, his face coming closer to mine and his eyes becoming more soft. I felt myself start to relax, and my wolf howled with joy. He smiled at me, and it meant a lot. He pressed his lips against mine before saying, I have to admit, it is cute. I started laughing against his lips and gave his arm a little smack as I said, "Shut up, I'm trying to kiss my girlfriend here." So, that's how our hot, steamy make-out session started. Kieran pushed me up against the tree he'd been leaning on earlier. He was gentle about it, but rough at the same time. He kissed me like he couldn't get enough, and I kissed him back with the same intensity. He put his hands on either side of me, pressing his body against mine. I started to nibble his bottom lip, and he let out a low, satisfying growl. I was running my hands through his hair and playing with it a bit, and he was loving it. I would have lied if I said he wasn't making me go crazy too. He licked my bottom lip, as if to ask for permission, and I was happy to give it to him. I let out a bit of a groan, and Kieran smiled against my lips. His tongue darted into mine and his taste erupted like fireworks on my taste buds. My fingers found the bottom of his shirt and I seemed to have no control over myself as I began to lift it up. Kieran was quick to back off, pulling away from me and taking his shirt off, throwing it to the ground. He met my lips eagerly again, his hands roaming down my body as if I was a trophy or something. Because he made me feel like I was worth it, I let out a loud moan. So, I did the same, my fingers gently brushing his broad shoulders and the tight skin of his chest and abs. I could feel the goosebumps starting to form a trail down my fingers. He shivered at my touch before letting out a moan himself. He picked me up off the ground and made me wrap my legs around his waist. He rested his hands on me, squeezing gently. I could tell Kieran was getting close, because I could feel him breathing heavily in my ear. He left my lips, and started kissing down my neck, and nipping my collarbone. He took a big whiff of my scent before growling again and kissing my soft spot, my mark. Then, he started sucking on it. I shouted with pleasure, even saying his name and playing with his hair. I felt my knees go weak. My wolf was howling with pleasure too, at being so close to her mate. When I twigged what was going on, I pushed Kieran's eager lips away from my neck. "Kieran," I said, out of breath. "We need to stop." He snapped out of it, blushing bright pink. I got myself sorted, fixed my shirt and moved the hair away from my face. Then I shook my head, trying to get a grip. Kieran turned away from me, his back muscles tensing up. Even from behind, I could see his hair was a mess, all because I kept playing with it and running my fingers through it. He was breathing really deeply. "Kieran, you all right?" I asked, a bit worried, in front of him. He still had a bit of a blush on his face and he opened his eyes and turned away from me again. "Babe," I said, again. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Stop lying." "There's nothing wrong." "Liar." "Seriously," he said, this time in a more forceful manner. "Then why are you not looking at me?" I shot back. "Because," he moaned, looking up at the sky before looking back at me. His cheeks were even more flushed this time. "Do you really want to know?" I nodded, looking a bit concerned. He turned around and pointed to the huge lump in his pants. "I'm trying to calm down," he said, a bit nervously, before looking down, embarrassed. I looked at his face before laughing out loud. I even fell to the ground laughing. He looked at me with a bit of a scowl as I clutched my belly and started snorting. "It's not funny," he moaned as I got back up, trying not to laugh. "Whatever, Kier. Let's just go home." "I'm so hungry," I said, as I felt my stomach rumble in agony. I put my arm around his waist while he put his arm around my shoulder. "On the way to the house," I said, "it's still funny." "Shut up," he said, pushing me to the ground and leaving me there. I started laughing again. He was so cute when he was embarrassed. "Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add." "Hey mummy," I said when I got home. I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek, grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, and we got going. Yeah, my mum and I were all right. We had a chat about it, and Kieran was a big help. She explained to me the things Kieran had told me and even said that my emotions got amped up. She told me all about her first shifts, and how training had been really helpful. "Hey guys," she said, still looking at the magazine she was reading. Kieran and I sat opposite her at the counter. "How was training?" "Your daughter is very lazy," Kieran moaned, remembering that he'd spent 30 minutes arguing with me about running for the third time that day. I gave him a little push with my shoulder, the sort of casual shove that's all in good fun. He almost toppled over, though. It was good. I broke my record. 10 miles in 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Did 400 push UPS and sit UPS and controlled my senses today, I said, rather proud of myself. "You're so narcissistic," Kieran said. I heard that. My mum laughed, looking up at me with a big smile. "That's good, love. She's getting better." She looked down at a spot on my neck. "Is that a hickey?" "What?" I said, blinking at her and on instinct, put my hand up to my neck. I got my phone out, which had a front camera, and had a look at my neck. Kieran had left a dark red hickey right on my spot. I looked at him, my face going a bright shade of red, and even he was blushing too. But I was livid with him because I got caught by my own mother. I looked over at my mum again, and she let out a little laugh. "Whatever," she said, shrugging. "I'm no threat. As long as you don't get pregnant, that is." "Now, that hickey," she said, pointing at it. "Your brother won't be too happy." Elias popped into the kitchen and said, "Hey Talia," just as I was thinking about my hickey. He looked at it and his eyes got really big when he saw the red spot. Kieran and I looked at each other, horrified. To be honest, Kieran looked like he wanted to make a run for it. But we were both pretty surprised when we heard a snort and a chuckle coming from my brother. "Well done, mate," Elias said, punching Kieran's fist. "You're not bad, mate. You're not bad at all. When I gave Tasha a hickey, it didn't look like that. Even when My eyes opened really wide and I put my hands on my ears. "Shut up." Elias laughed and said, "Now you know how I feel. You two gross me out. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. Tonight was my first proper date with Kieran Redford. I must say, it's a bit hard to believe that this is only our first date, given that we've been an item for 4 months now. but he decided to ask me on a first date for our 4th month as an official couple, even if it does sound a bit corny. "Hey babe," Kieran said as we walked out of Brooke's class together, putting his arm across my shoulder. I caught a few glares from girls who were clearly jealous, especially the ones that had a thing with him, if you know what I mean. They were the ones who specifically told me that me and Kieran's relationship would last only like 3 hours. Now, they're scratching their heads, wondering why we've been together for so long. I remember when Jennifer asked me if I'd put a spell on him or something, trying to spread the rumor that I'm a witch. But only if she knew about werewolves. "What do you want, Kier?" I said, trying to get my binder into my bag. Kieran decided to trip on my ankle on purpose, catching himself just in time before he fell and embarrassed himself. I looked at him, clearly confused. I blinked a couple of times before his cheeks went a bit red and he smiled. "Am I missing something here?" I started to say. "You've got me falling for you," he said, trying to pick up the pace. "So, are you going on a date with me?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You know the type where you just laugh so hard that you can't say anything until the end?" Well, that was me. I couldn't stop laughing and even started crying with the pain, so I grabbed my stomach. I stood up straight when Kieran crossed his arms over his chest and pouted, acting hurt. "It's not funny," he said. If possible, his cheeks went a deeper shade of red. "Sorry," I said, smiling. I wrapped my arms around his waist and looked up at him. "Seriously?" He nodded, but didn't look at her. I went on my tiptoes and kissed his cheeks. "I'd love to," I whispered in his ear. And that was how he asked me out. It was funny how I was able to make him feel shy and vulnerable. It made me feel special. She was the only girl who could make such a big impression on him. I'd be lying if I said he didn't affect me too. It was about 2 hours before my date, and my hair was damp and drying into its natural slight curls. I was a bit freaked out, to be honest. I was really nervous. "I've been trying to find something to wear tonight. I'll tell you, it was tricky because he hadn't told me where or what we'd be doing. I just knew I had to go for something casual." I was nervous as I searched through my wardrobe. My flat iron beeped, and I got a bit panicky for no reason, probably just because I'm paranoid and it was a sign that Kieran was going to be here any minute. I jumped when I heard someone knock on my door. I was a bit nervous, to be honest. I shook my head and had another rummage through my closet. "Come in," I yelled. "Hey sis," Tasha said, skipping into my room, her blonde hair whipped into a messy bun. "Elias told me you've got your first date with Kieran," she joked, winking at me. "So, I decided to help, even though your brother doesn't like Kieran." "Cheers," I sighed, ignoring the last part. "Help is really needed here. What are you supposed to wear?" She said that while rummaging through the other side of my huge closet. "Casual attire." It was pretty quiet, except for the sound of the hangers sliding across the metal pole. I started to panic a bit when I couldn't find anything to wear. I knew I should have gone shopping. I just thought, with so many clothes in my wardrobe, I'd find something to wear. "I'll be right back," Tasha said, as if she'd had an aha moment. She rushed out of the room, and 5 minutes later, she returned with a dress that was pretty and casual at the same time. My mouth opened wide and I was lost for words. It was perfect. I reckon you should wear this, she said, smiling at me. I had a good look at the dress. It was plain white and sleeveless. The top wrapped around the neck and had floral cutouts across the black material. The pleated white skirt was probably around mid-thigh length. To finish it off, we attached a black bow to the back. "Where'd you get this?" I asked, fidgeting with the material. "It was on sale," she said, holding up the dress. "Oh, I love a bargain." "I'm not going to put up with it," I finally said, shaking my head. I felt a bit embarrassed that I'd even thought about wearing Tasha's dress for myself, but then I felt a bit self-conscious about that. "Take it, love," she said, dead serious. She checked the time. "You've got an hour to get ready. I'm not going to argue with you. If you don't take it, I won't let you walk out that front door. And later, you'll just regret it." She started chatting away. I laughed, putting my arms around her. "Thank you so much," I said, jumping up and down as Tasha laughed. Afterwards, Tasha kindly offered to help me out, applying minimal makeup. She'd only put on eyeliner, powder, mascara, and a light pink lipstick, saying I was already beautiful without makeup. She even straightened my hair for me. I made a mental note to do something for her in return for what she's done for me tonight. As she picked up a strand of hair and ran the straightener through it, she asked, "So where's this special guy taking you?" "I'm not sure," I said, starting to feel nervous again. I was getting a bit restless after 30 minutes. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest and the sweat running down my forehead, even though it was freezing in here. "Oh, a surprise," she teased. She rolled her eyes, thinking of something. "I remember my first date with your brother. He took me to frozen yogurt after a movie. He thought it'd be a laugh to try and eat 3 full large cups of frozen dairy. So, I went for it, actually, and thought it was a good idea to mix things up and try something different on a date. He didn't know I had a small appetite. I'm sure you noticed that I eat like a bird." I nodded and smiled. "So, after I'd had my second cup, I started feeling sick in the stomach and then I threw up all over your poor brother. I remember when he took me home that night, my dad thought he'd got me pregnant and I was going through the symptoms." Elias ran as fast as I've ever seen him run that night. My dad took out his rifle. Just to scare him, my dad shot the street light. I started laughing with her. Honestly, it was the worst date ever. But it was also the best. Even when I threw up on him, ruined his clothes, and after my dad scared him, he wasn't one of those guys who stopped liking me just because I had a crazy dad or I did something embarrassing in front of him. Before I could say anything, she spun my makeup chair around so I was facing my mirror and said, "Well, you're all finished, love. We're running out of time." My jaw literally dropped. My skin was practically glowing and my hair was straightened to perfection, with the side part going through it. I even touched my face to make sure it was really me. "Do you like it?" she asked sincerely, folding her arms across her chest. "I love it," I shouted, jumping up and down and hugging her again. "Wow, I really can't thank you enough. Thank you so much." No problem, sis, she said, rolling her eyes. Just get ready, already. She left the room so I could get the dress on. I put my black boot wedges on and tied the laces. I stood up and did a 360, having a good look at myself in the mirror. Done yet? Tasha called out. Can I come in? Yes, I said, out of breath, freaking out at how I looked. The door opened and Tasha's jaw dropped. Wow, Kieran's going to have a hard time keeping his hands to himself. Talia, my mum called from downstairs. Kieran's here. I started to walk around, feeling the butterflies in my stomach. I was nervous and couldn't think of what to say. To make matters worse, I had my doubts. Should I pretend I was sick? Should I go down? I'd do it, but only if it's really awkward and I do something embarrassing, like what happened to Tasha. Talia, Tasha said sternly, grabbing my shoulders. Let's go. Just be confident. I nodded slowly, took a few shaky steps downstairs, and got to work. Kieran was turned towards me and my mum was sat on the couch opposite him, looking at me. She gasped, and her eyes welled up. Oh, darling, you're so beautiful. Kieran turned around slowly, our eyes meeting. My heart stopped when I saw his eyes shining with happiness as he took in my appearance. He got up from the sofa, his smile still on his face as he continued to look at me with admiration. His hair was styled in a mess. He was wearing a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Dark rinse straight-fit jeans hugged him nicely. To finish off the outfit, he wore black Nike trainers. He kissed my forehead and said, "Hey Talis." I was surprised and looked at him straight in the eye. What? No boring compliments like "you're beautiful" or anything like that? I asked. To be honest, I was surprised. Kieran seemed like the type of guy who'd be flattering girls on the first date. I've got nothing to say. You left me lost for words. That's how gorgeous you are, he said, shrugging. He even winked at me. Wow, who taught you to be so sweet? I felt a bit red. He laughed and kissed my blushing cheeks, which made me blush some more. Luckily, my mum had left the room, wishing us a good time, not hovering like a normal parent. After you, my queen, he joked, waving his hand towards the door. You better believe I'm your queen, I joked, laughing afterwards. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. Oh my gosh, I said, my eyes lighting up as I saw where we were going. I was so excited I literally jumped up and down. You're the best boyfriend ever, I said, giving him a kiss on the cheek as he parked. He rolled his eyes. You're so easy to please. It's just L.E. Jardins. It's not just L.E. Jardins, you know. You know how much I love this place, I gasped, already getting out of his car. I grabbed his arm and pulled him inside as fast as I could. I took a big sniff of the delicious smell of food inside, and my heart felt full and content. I closed my eyes and felt like I was in heaven. You know, you look like a stupid, Kieran whispered in my ear, tangling his fingers with mine. I opened my eyes and glared at him. Give me peace, will you? You don't have to get jealous just because I like this place more than I like you. You don't like me because you love me, he teased, pulling me into the line. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck and the blood starting to color my cheeks. To be honest, I did love him, I just hadn't admitted it yet. He did too. I was worried that if I said it, he'd take off, and Kieran was someone I didn't want to lose. Whatever, I said, slapping his shoulder when he started laughing. Just get me my usual. I'll have the W cheeseburger with fries and a wild berry tea, please, he confirmed, nodding. You know it, I said, slapping him and searching for a table to sit on. 10 minutes later, we started eating and I wolfed down all my food. Kieran and I started throwing fries at each other's faces, laughing at the janitor's irritated expression. I know it was a bit harsh, but I swear they're just sitting around doing nothing. They needed to earn what they got, just like the rest of us. The W cheeseburger was more or less my and Kieran's thing. Every time we come to Le Jardins, we'd eat it and Kieran would joke that we were the type of couple who had corny traditions. I'll be honest with you, Kieran and I did have a lot of things that only the two of us knew about. I guess it was a boyfriend-girlfriend thing. After we'd eaten, Kieran pulled me to his car, his eyes lighting up with excitement. What? I said that it was obvious to me that there was some confusion. You really that excited to bring me home? He gasped, acting like he was in pain. He was holding his hand to his chest. I can't believe you think this is it. You really think I'm that cheap? Sort of, I said, shrugging and laughing as his eyes opened wide. I gave him a hug and pinched his cheek. I'm only joking. I sat in the passenger seat while Kieran closed my door and came to the other side. So where are you taking me? I asked. It's a surprise. An hour later, Kieran pulled up into a car park. My eyes opened wide as it came into view, with just a dirt trail leading to something beyond the trees. There was just one street light on. Is this where you kill me? I joke, unbuckling my seatbelt and getting out before Kieran could open the door. Look, just because I open my own door doesn't mean I'm a gentleman. I've got a reputation to keep up, you know. He gave me a stern look as he lectured. Then he picked me up bridal style, which made me squeal and giggle. And to answer your question, I can't kill you. I need your help to get ready for the history test. Otherwise, I'd fail. I gasped and started laughing as I slapped his shoulder. You're such a dork. He strolled along the dirt trail and I wrapped my arms around his neck, feeling a bit scared. I've never been here before, so naturally, I'm a bit nervous. Chill out, Kieran whispered, trying to calm me down. I was confused by the sound of leaves moving quickly in the distance, and then I thought for a moment it might have been the sound of waves crashing. As we got out into an open space, my jaw hit the floor for the millionth time tonight. We were on the beach. It wasn't littered with rubbish or anything like that. It was clean with pure white sand. There were a few dunes in different spots. The ocean was there, stretching out before me, with the waves lapping against the shore, and the moonlight glinting on the water, which was all just so amazing to see. Lined across the far end of the beach were posts, light at the top so you could see at night. There was nobody here but the two of us. I'm not sure what it did, but I felt at peace for once in a long time. I'll always remember spending time on the beach. It was a one-time thing for me. I only came here a few times a year because it was just too far to travel. It's the pack's own, Kieran said, reading my mind. It's a private beach, just to get away from all the stress and hard work that's been put on us lately. It's stunning, I whispered, still taking in the beach. Not as beautiful as you, Kieran whispered, mainly to himself. He was so sincere when he spoke, it made my heart melt. Before I could say anything, he took off his shoes with his feet. I did the same, kicking off my wedges, happy that it came off easily. He legged it towards the water, still carrying me bridal style. Kieran Redford, better not do that. I shouted a warning just before he threw me into the icy water, which closed over me. My head hit the surface. I saw Kieran bent over, laughing. The bottoms of his jeans were the only ones getting wet from standing in the water just a couple of inches away from me. Then, I had a brainwave, and a smile spread across my face. I faked a scream, going underwater and flapping my arms around so it looked like I was drowning. "Help!" I shouted. "Kieran Talia!" I heard him say, and you could tell he was pretty shocked. I heard the splash, which was a sign that he'd gone in to save me. I stood up straight, a smirk spreading across my face. I crossed my arms in front of my chest as Kieran's head popped up and he looked at me, eyes narrowed. His hair was soaked and so was his thin shirt, showing off his muscles. "Why, you little liar," he said. I let out a squeal and a laugh as he caught me off guard, grabbing my legs from under the water and pulling me under. We stayed like that, playing like little kids at the beach. Splashing, laughing, screaming, and just having fun. It was something I needed, and I was glad he took me here. I was sure my lips were already purple, judging from how they were quivering in my shaking body. I got cold really quickly, and when I was cold, I was absolutely freezing. I tried to rub my arms up and down, but it didn't work because I was still in the freezing cold water. Kieran tugged my arm until we reached the shore. "Gosh, you're such a killjoy," he joked, as I gave him a punch and clicked my tongue. "I'm only joking." He waved me over and I sat down on the sand. "Gosh, you made me ruin Tasha's dress. How am I going to?" I bit my tongue and swallowed hard as Kieran stripped off the shirt that was stuck to his body and threw it to the floor. The water drops shone on his now exposed muscles. He had his back to me, and I just about managed to resist the urge to run my hands down his back when I saw the muscles rippling with every movement. We locked eyes and he gave me a smug look when he noticed me checking him out. "What did you say?" He made a joke and sat down next to me. To be honest, I did forget what I was saying. He started to warm me up by running his hands up and down my arms. I rested my head on my shoulder and groaned as my teeth chattered. "My lips feel cold and numb." "Thank you so much," I said, still a bit shaky. "I've got a solution for that." I shot him a look, his eyebrows waggling up and down, just messing around. "Can I kiss you, Talia Ainsley?" "Hell no." "Oh, come on, just one kiss," he asked, giving me puppy dog eyes, his bottom lip jutting out. I didn't say anything as his face got closer to mine. I felt the pull as his lips touched mine softly. He started to kiss me with hunger, his teeth nipping at my lips softly. I let out a little moan as he started to push me down on the sand, his hand resting at my side, holding his weight off me. When he was literally on top of me, all of his body touching mine, I began to become breathless. The heat made me crave more of him. He ran his hands up my arms and up my face until they got tangled in my curly hair. My hands just naturally started to move down his neck and over his amazing body. I gently stroked his stomach and back, feeling the grains of sand on his body. He made a noise and shook. When I was already feeling dizzy from being out of breath, Kieran pulled away and rested his forehead against mine, panting. He looked straight into my eyes and smiled, which made me melt all the way inside. I swallowed, then put my hand on his cheek. Even after seeing that stunning beach, the gorgeous stars glittering in the night sky, and the massive ocean that had me speechless, nothing compared to the person standing right in front of me. He was the absolute core of beauty itself. He was priceless and timeless, and I could never get tired of him. "I love you," I whispered, running my thumb across his cheek. I couldn't stop the words from coming out of my mouth. I didn't regret it either. I really did love him. I didn't think I knew. His eyes opened really wide when he pulled his hands out of my hair. I could tell he was feeling indecisive because I'm a wolf and I could sense it. He didn't know what to do next. He got up off me. Kieran scratched the back of his neck, feeling a bit nervous, before saying, "You know I'll be right back. I'll just get the towel in the car so you can warm up." I sat up too, a frown making its way onto my face. I could feel the tears starting to well up as I watched him walk to the car, his back muscles all tense. I felt really stupid for thinking he'd say it back or that he actually did love me. I was right, he was running away. The sound of a gunshot cut through the air, bringing my thoughts to a halt. My eyes shot open in shock. The scene before me made my heart jump out of my chest. I heard a really loud scream, and when I looked, I saw that it was me who had made it. I couldn't believe it. Kieran collapsed, making a lot of noise, and grabbed his side where blood was pouring out and rolling onto the white sand. The doctor came in, rifling through some papers on his clipboard. I stood up, my heart pounding as Lila grabbed my hand and stood up with me. The doctor then said, looking serious, "I'd like to ask the guests to join Kieran Redford." The whole waiting room went quiet as we all listened to the doctor. The tension in the room was electric and I could feel the nervousness of everyone. Then the doctor said something that made us fall to the ground in tears. "Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add." I just sat there, mouth open. I started shaking like a leaf as the world started spinning around me. For some weird reason, I was waiting for the ground to open up and swallow me whole. I need to get out of this awful situation. I just couldn't get my head around the scene that was playing out in front of me. It was a bit of a shock to the system. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I tried to get up, but my legs went numb. My stomach felt like someone had punched it where Kieran had been shot, and it was like I was feeling what Kieran was feeling at the moment. I could feel the silver grazing my raw flesh, burning it slowly. But I was too numb to care. I saw an old couple stumbling out of a trail that led to a beach house. I'd say the guy with the tattoo on his shoulder was part of the Eclipse Pack. He had a rifle in each hand, with his shy wife following him behind. When she finally looked at Kieran, she let out a shrill gasp and took a step back, her legs shaking. Her hand shook as she covered her mouth. "Oh my gosh, Zeke," she cried, patting her husband's shoulder and pointing at Kieran's body. "It's the Alpha's son." "Oh my god," Zeke said, shocked. Instead of going numb like I did, he rushed over to Kieran and knelt on the ground next to him, dropping his rifle. "Anita, call the cops." I watched as Anita legged it as fast as she could towards the beach house. Zeke then grabbed Kieran's head and said, "Listen to me, Sonny. We'll get you the help you need. Help is on the way." Kieran groaned and tried to get his head up, but he let it fall back down again. That's when I snapped out of my shock and ran over to Kieran, stumbling over the sand and falling onto my knees next to him. Blood was gushing out of his side and I couldn't help but stare. My hands were shaking like crazy as I brought it up to my mouth. I could feel the hot tears rolling down my cheeks, and then I lost it. "Kieran," I said, wailing even louder. "Kieran, Kieran, my voice was cracking and I couldn't speak because I was crying. I gave Kieran a little shake of the shoulders. "Kieran, please don't leave me. Please stay with me." Kieran made a noise and I then saw that his face had gone pale and was all pale. He was losing a lot of blood. I grabbed his hand, tore a bit of my shirt off and pressed down on the cut. I heard him groan louder. "You might want to calm down," Zeke warned. "You're making him suffer more than he already is." "Zeke," Anita said, "I could hear the sirens down the street. They're on their way." "All right, let's go through this. Can you go outside and call them over?" A few seconds later, 2 police cars and an ambulance screeched to a halt, their blue and red lights blazing in the dark sky. I let the police officers pull me back and watched helplessly as Kieran was put onto a gurney and set into the ambulance. One of the cops grabbed the yellow tape that said caution and wrapped it around where I could still see Kieran's blood. I quickly looked away. 2 other police officers were questioning Anita and Zeke. One of the paramedics gave me a look from the back of the ambulance and asked, "Would you like to come with us?" I nodded quickly, jumped into the ambulance and tried to keep it together as Kieran lay there in pain. I felt helpless and broken. I held Kieran's hand as I waited for us to get to the hospital. "Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add." I was pacing around the waiting room, itching to get into the surgical room. But when I tried to follow Kieran after they rushed him out of the ambulance and into the hospital, a couple of hospital guards stopped me and tried to calm me down. So, that's how I ended up here. I finally stopped crying, my eyes all puffy and red. My hair was a total mess from the strong wind at the beach. My clothes were still damp and covered in sand. But I didn't care. I was just worried about Kieran's safe being. As I sat down on the leather-covered chairs, one of the attendants offered me a coffee. I politely turned her down. The staff were nice, but I still wasn't feeling okay. The antiseptic smell and the white walls and tiles were actually getting on my nerves. "Where is he?" I heard Lila scream from the front desk. I could tell she was sobbing pretty heavily and wasn't taking it well. "Where's my brother? I want to see him now." "Look, ma'am," the secretary began calmly. "I'm sorry. But please, just take a seat and stay calm. It'll take a couple more hours." "I've got no more time to wait," Lila said. I jumped when I heard something fall to the ground. Lila, Cruz, and Beck had said calmly. Soon, the doors were open, and Beck and Cruz were holding a struggling Lila in their arms. Knox quickly followed, looking a bit disheveled and worried. Cruz and Beck had sat down and tried to calm Lila down, who was feeling torn. Knox sat next to me and grabbed my hand. "Can you tell me what happened?" Knox whispered and fidgeted with his hair. "Tell me something. He's my best friend, Talia. I can't stand not knowing." I gave him the full story, and in the meantime, Lila had calmed down and was listening. The same goes for the other two boys. Knox broke down and cried after I'd finished my story, and Lila got angry again, kicking the magazine stand down. The doors of the waiting room swung open again and Luca strolled in with Brielle, their gaze landing on us. I started to feel down again just seeing Luca. He was my best friend and I wanted to talk to him about all my problems. But I knew Lila needed to chill. Luca was the only thing that could help. He shot me a look that said sorry for wrapping Lila in his arms. At first, she started hitting him, but he never let her go. In the end, she gave up and slumped into him, crying into his shirt. Brielle had been cuddling with Beck the whole time, probably because she could tell he was hurt and broken. When Cruz told Luca and Brielle the story, they were gobsmacked. Brielle stayed with me for about an hour. She was my shoulder to cry on. And then there was the whole fidgeting and freaking out business with Beck. She cried with Beck, feeling his pain. "I feel so helpless," Beck said, wiping a tear from his cheek. "What can you do when the person who stood up for you all those times you've been picked on in junior high is in pain and you can't help?" "Shh, Beck," Brielle said, rubbing his back to soothe him. "Everything will be all right." Then, everyone went quiet. It was obvious that we were all thinking about something. We were too nervous and anxious to say anything. The clock read 3 in the morning and every tick felt like an hour. That didn't exactly help with my worry. Lila could sense my worry and sat next to me, holding my hand without saying anything. I was grateful for her comfort. She didn't need to say a word, she just had to show me that she'd be there for me. I gave her a handshake to show I'd return the favor. The door opened again. The doctor came in, rifling through some papers on his clipboard. I stood up, my heart pounding as Lila grabbed my hand and stood up with me. Everyone stood up as well. Then the doctor, looking serious, said, "I'd like to ask the guests to join Kieran Redford here." The whole waiting room went quiet as we all listened to the doctor. The tension in the room was electric and I could feel the nervousness of everyone. Then, the doctor said something that made us fall to the ground in tears. He looked us straight in the eye. He then smiled and said, "Congratulations. Kieran's doing well and has had the surgery. You can see him in 20 minutes, since he's awake." We all cheered and cried with joy. Kieran was all right. I felt a huge weight being lifted off my shoulders. I turned to Lila and gave her a big hug. She sniffed and laughed. Beck gave everyone a big hug and said, "If anyone tells him I was crying over him, I'll make sure you regret it." We all had a laugh at his expense. Luca came over and gave me a hug. "Well done, Talia. Now, remember, he just had an operation. Please don't put him through the ringer by asking him to do an inter-office exchange. Luca, pipe down. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. I felt a bit sick when Luca and Lila left Kieran's room and it was my turn. I had no idea how I was going to bump into him. I had no idea how he'd react when he first saw me, especially after what went down on the beach when I confessed. I immediately flushed at the memory. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob and went in. The first thing I saw was Kieran on his bed, the sheets pulled up to his chest. A couple of wires were attached to him here and there. And then my heart skipped a beat when his blue eyes met mine. He smiled softly and patted the bed next to him. I sat down slowly, trying not to hurt him. I didn't know what to say, so I just grabbed his hand and started crying. "Honey, please calm down," Kieran said gently. "It's hard to see you cry." "I'm sorry," I laughed. "You really scared the living crap out of me." "Come here," he called. I looked at him, not wanting to, and pointed down to the side where he'd been shot. "Don't worry." He sat down, made a bit of a noise and then opened his arms. I gradually got into him, and his smell helped me to calm down. His heat felt nice and comforting. I took a big whiff of his smell and hugged him back. "You really scared me," I muttered and closed my eyes. "Don't do that again." Kieran kissed my forehead. "I'm really sorry I scared you. I'm really sorry for everything. But don't worry. Wolves can take this better than a regular man and I'll be healed in about a week." I had a thought, and I looked at him, wondering if he'd had the same idea. I was pretty shocked, too. "Weren't they curious about why you were healing so quickly or why you're not in a deep sleep, but actually wide awake?" "No, the doctors here are aware of werewolves. We live in a werewolf-infested town," he laughed. "Talia, about what you said at the beach," Kieran said. I got all tense in his arms and he stroked my hair to make me feel better. "Look, I'm sorry," I started to say. "I love you too." Kieran suddenly stopped talking after that. I moved away from him and looked into his eyes, trying to see if he was lying. Instead, I found complete honesty and love. I blinked once, too stunned to say anything. "I just said what?" Kieran said, looking at the space in the middle of my eyes. "I find these things really difficult," he said, annoyed with himself. I tried to keep a straight face, but I couldn't stop laughing. I love you." I couldn't stop laughing, so I started snorting. Kieran looked at me seriously and went red with embarrassment. I gave him a quick kiss on the lips and said, "Don't worry, I love you too. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add." Things had definitely started to slow down. The chaos was starting to die down. The iron justice hasn't been an issue for me for the last 2 weeks. Kieran healed in a matter of days. His incident had actually brought the Eclipse and Moonfire pack closer, and they felt they had to find the intruder, the person who'd harmed a wolf in the territory both packs shared. I got out of patrol duties. I was finally getting enough sleep, but of course, I woke up with a start, some nights drenched in sweat and trying to get my breathing back. Kieran slept over some nights because he was so protective of me. Some nights, Elias or Tasha would sleep over. Even my mum did. I felt like they were babysitting me, and eventually I lost my temper and snapped at them. But they quickly dismissed me with pained expressions. I gave it about 3 months before things stopped completely and my life went back to normal sort of. I was still trying to get used to the idea of werewolves or healers, as they're also known. I couldn't believe it, I'd thought of it as a myth less than 4 months ago. To sum up everything I've learned since then, healers are the top werewolf caste. No one knew we were still around, though. We could heal any werewolf, obviously. But every healer has their own way of doing things. Some people even heal with their eyes, their lips, their chanting and their spit. I'd go for my hands. Back to the pack, Beck and Brielle didn't get together. Unfortunately, though. I thought that, since the incident and judging by their behavior in the waiting room, they would. But it seemed like a bit of a struggle for Brielle. She wasn't sure what was best for her. I later found out she was insecure. She was afraid to trust Beck again. They found out they were mates when Beck was only 14 and Brielle was 15. He was young. He was scared. He turned her down because of it. The other reason was Damien. She was crazy about Damien, too. But I wasn't going to get involved in her problem. It was her heart and her own rightful choice, and I respected that. But another pair finally became a couple. Lila and Luca were probably the cutest, but the couple that showed the most PDA. Kieran would flinch and look away, and his eyes would get all big whenever the two of them started to make out. But I'd just put my hand on his chest, using my ability to calm his racing and angry heart. So, after what happened with Kieran, the two of them finally got together and it actually made them closer somehow. Lila told me how she'd known Luca was her perfect match since she was 16, but she'd been too slow to actually give his heart to him. Obviously, this was because of her mum dying. I know you're probably a bit confused about the mate thing. Well, I am too, sort of. A werewolf pair finds their mate out of the blue even if they've known that person for years. They were cursed for killing most of the healers. One day, out of the blue, something would happen to leave a stunned girl and a speechless boy. It's a tough world we live in. Back to the present, I never liked to talk about what happened with Kieran. It really left an impression on me. But I stopped myself from thinking about it too much. Kieran sometimes joked about it. He's used to dealing with these sorts of situations, being alpha and all. And today, I went on another date with him. I told you I've got hands and can open the door myself, I groaned, slapping him on the head just as I got out of my house. Ouch, Kieran said, narrowing his eyes at me. He was still holding the door open to his car. I just thought I'd be a bit nice. You're so ungrateful. He gave me a playful pout, turning his head away like he didn't want me to talk to him. This was our usual greeting. I wrapped my arms around his waist, laughing and resting my chin on his chest. When he still wouldn't look at me, I kissed his neck, and heard him low and growly at the back of his throat. I smiled against his neck and started laughing my real laugh yet, the one with the snorting. Kieran and I shared a laugh. I gave him a kiss on the nose and said, "You're not going to stay mad at me, are you?" He took both of my hands in his and looked down at me. His blue eyes had more spark than the stars in the sky. He smiled at me, and I could see him resting his forehead on mine. He inhaled my scent and said, you look beautiful, Talis. I laughed out loud. I just put on some light, dark skinny jeans, a grey, knitted, oversized, long-sleeved sweater, and black boots from Steve Madden. I also had my hair up in a nice bun with a headband on. I just did my makeup with mascara and eyeliner. To finish off, I had black pearls in my ears and I carried a black clutch. Kieran did say to dress comfortably. You look good, I admitted, biting my lip. I looked at his body and took him in. He was wearing a dark grey button-up shirt rolled up to his elbows and straight-fit jeans that were hanging low on his hips. His Nikes were in good nick and his hair was short, but not too short. He cut his hair and I thought he looked good. In the end, I got in his car and he drove off to a nice pancake house. I smiled. He knew me too well. I really enjoyed eating at places that were more relaxed than posh restaurants where you have to sit up straight. I'm not saying I don't like eating at classy restaurants, I just prefer less crowds, small places, and a cozy feel. Another reason was the waffles. I thought the waffles here were amazing and I could eat them at any time of the day. Next, we stopped somewhere that took me by surprise. The Pack House, I said, looking at the two-story building in front of us. I unbuckled my seat belt and waited for the engine to die before getting out of the car. Yet, Kieran said, coming around the car and putting an arm around my shoulder. I just wanted some time to myself with my partner. I stuck out my tongue. I'm not your girl, but you're my man. Whatever you say, boss, he said, rolling his eyes. He took his keys and had a rummage through them. When he finally found the right key, he pushed open the door. I just wanted some peace. Take a break from all the work. Plus, I haven't spent any time with you on my own. I just want some peace with my mate. I just nodded. We decided on popcorn, a warm blanket, cuddling and a movie. After a bit of a debate on what movie to watch and a few insults, I had won. With a grin, I happily skipped to the DVD player under the flat-screen television and pushed Captain America in. Eventually, after the part of his transformation, I got bored. I had to admit that we watched this particular movie way too much. I'm afraid it was all down to my obsession with Chris Evans and his nicely sculpted chest. I started tracing circles on Kieran's stomach, my head leaning against his chest. I could feel his muscles under his button-down shirt. I looked up at Kieran and saw him fast asleep. His mouth was slightly open and his head was hanging off the back of the sofa. I found the scene amusing. I got up off the sofa and gave Kieran a lingering kiss on his soft and full ones. I laughed as he pulled me closer. I pressed another kiss to his neck, his weakness, and smiled when I heard him groan. I couldn't stop laughing. Watching him sleep was actually really peaceful. Kieran was a total hunk. I traced the side of his face with my finger, following the contour of his closed eyes, high cheekbones, strong jaw, and finally, the scar on his lips. His eyes opened as I lingered there with my fingers. What are you up to? Kieran looked at me funny, but kissed my fingers. Nothing, I told him, looking straight at him. I said, I just think you're really handsome. His arms pulled me closer to him. He gave me a smug look and kissed me on the lips. And, he said, giving me a kiss. Your peck. beautiful. Peck. He rested his forehead against mine, gulping and still looking at my lips. You're really cheesy, I said, brushing my lips against his. I pressed my lips against his in a soft, tender kiss to show just how much I loved him. But it quickly turned into one of those things where one of us just had to end it before we couldn't stop. But this time, none of us stopped. Kieran pulled me on top of him, with my legs going on either side of him on the couch. I pressed my chest close to his own, ran my hands through his short black hair and locked them behind his neck. He groaned as I tugged at the bottom of his hair. He slowly ran his hands down the curves of my body. Somehow, my thick jumper ended up on the floor, and the thin fabric of my undershirt was all that covered my body from his hands. Kieran gently licked my neck and jaw, playfully nipping and grazing his teeth here and there. When he went as far as to kiss the top of my breasts that were exposed at the top of my shirt, I moaned loudly, clutching him closer to me. I could just about see him smiling against me. While he ran his hands up and down my legs, my hands found their way to the buttons of his shirt. I slowly unbuttoned them until the front was completely open. Kieran returned to my lips, shivering and grunting under my touch as I stroked my hands down the tight skin of his chest and stomach. He gave his t-shirt a quick shrug and stood up from the sofa. I wrapped my legs around his waist and felt like I was the only one who should be there like a puzzle piece. When I realized we were in one of the rooms, I felt my heart skip a beat and my body start to respond. I started whimpering, wanting him more than ever. Kieran laid me on the bed and kissed me, but not gently. He pressed his whole body against mine, keeping his weight off of me at the same time. He left my mouth again, leaving kisses all the way down to my hips, which made me buck my hips forward and moan. When he came back to my face, I trailed my hands really low, tracing the edge of his jeans. His hips moved forward, grinding against my bottom half. He made a noise, keeping his hands firmly on my hips. Every place he touched me was set on fire. His body was flush with mine. I was delighted by the touch of his fingers and his kisses. He felt the same. I knew. I was pretty sure I wanted him. I gave Kieran's belt a little tug. He pulled back a pained expression, his hands tracing my face softly. Are you sure? He was in obvious discomfort, and his eyes were a fixed shade of black. I nodded and I was sure my eyes held the same darkness. It showed the same desire in his eyes. That was all it took before his lips crashed down on mine. Our clothes were all over the place and our bodies were all mixed up. I love you so much, Talis, Kieran whispered in my ear, smiling against it. Before I could tell him I loved him too, a loud cry of pleasure took its place as Kieran started mating with me. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. My phone beeped, waking me up from the best sleep I've ever had. I smiled as I stretched, feeling the pain in my legs. But it was all worth it in the end. I felt so much closer to Kieran, and making love to him was indescribable. I was head over heels for him. Kieran groaned as I sat up, reaching for my phone on the table lamp. I couldn't help laughing when he tried to pull me back to sit next to him. Where are you off to? He said, still half asleep and not opening his eyes. 2 times in one night didn't make you exhausted? Wow, I've really got a winner here. Shut up, I said, feeling the blood rush up my neck and into my cheeks. I pulled his arms around my waist and staggered out of bed. I put on my jeans and shirt, grabbing my phone on the way out. I got to call my mum before she starts worrying. There's no service here. I'll be back in a few. Kieran groaned, flopping down so he was all cushioned up. I gave him a look and got my shoes on before stepping out into the cold. My face flushed again as I realized we'd been in the whole day. I tried to unlock my iPhone, but the screen just froze. Text message, just a heads up, this is an unknown number. My eyebrows went up and I was intrigued. I pressed open message on my thumb. When I opened the message, my hand started shaking and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. On the screen was a video. I hadn't played it yet, but it clearly showed a woman with dark, wet hair and a new scar across her forehead. She was sitting on a single chair with her hands tied behind her back and her feet tied together. Her white shirt was soaking wet and had visible dirt stains around a tiny hole. Her brown eyes, filled with hatred, looked straight into the camera. Dim light spilled onto her, casting shadows of her and the surrounding items in what seemed to be a warehouse. "Mum," I whispered, my voice trembling into the night. Hesitantly, I pressed the button that had scared me the most that evening. "Talia, whatever you do, don't come looking for me. Whatever you do, don't come looking for me," my mum warned, looking straight into the camera. Her eyes held determination and meaning. But then she had to squeeze her eyes tight shut and let out a scream of pain as the bucket hanging above her spilled its contents. She hissed and screamed, making me jump and almost drop the phone. Her skin began to bubble and steam came off her. Patches of her skin turned red. Within 2 seconds, her skin returned to normal. "Wolfsbane." She opened her eyes again and looked hatefully at something or someone behind the camera. She spat out blood. "What makes you think I'll tell my daughter to come here?" There was no reply, so she chuckled dryly. "You're pathetic," she spat, almost springing from her seat and tearing the ropes tying her down with her superhuman strength. However, the wolfsbane was spilled onto her again. I shut my eyes tight, letting her scream, which ended in sobs of pain, numb my ears. "Go ahead," my mum hissed through gritted teeth. "Kill me." She then looked straight at the camera, her eyes dilating and patches of fur trying to break through her skin. I could see the muscles moving under her arms and on her face. The wolfsbane was holding her wolf back. A single tear spilled out of her eye before she said, "Talia, I'm sorry. I love you both. Please don't come after me. I would rather die than live with the thought of my baby girl being buried. I'll be fine. I'll find a way to get out of here." Wolfsbane was spilled onto her again. I gripped the phone tighter. In the middle of her agonizing cry, the video ended. Only then did I realize that my whole body was shaking. Tears soaked my face, dripping down my chin and onto my shirt. My hands gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. I could feel the blood draining from my body as a cold darkness swept over me. But I wasn't scared. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.